It's great to be here. Thanks to the President's Institute for inviting me. It's a real privilege and an honor to be asked to be here. And I was really excited about coming until I flew in last night from Singapore, and this morning I was met by our senior partner here in Denmark, a tremendous leader, Thomas Hoffman-Bang, who's here earlier. And he mentioned when he first picked me up, and now he's repeated it about 8 times over the course of the day, that, you know, they've had Richard Branson and Jack Welch and you. So we'll see how that turns out, but thanks, Thomas. We're working with companies on their most complex and important business issues. And what does that get us into? It gets us into talking with our clients about, as they try and get closer to their customer, what kind of technology, data science, data and analytic capabilities do we need to have in KPMG to be able to have the kind of impact at our clients as they're trying to navigate some of those issues. You know, we don't usually see client issues that don't come with a tax or a regulatory dimension to it, so we've got a deep bench of folks who can operate globally in that arena. And certainly all of the companies that we deal with, and we'll talk about more about this in a minute, I think, are dealing with how do they transform their business. And we do a lot of that work around the world. And the reason I go through some of that is simply as a tee-up to be able to say that as you think about that snapshot of the kinds of services that KPMG provides, it gives us a perspective. So we asked those CEOs for their input on exactly that question. Over the next 3 years, what do you see as the major opportunities and challenges facing you? And the survey results that I'll talk about a little bit in the few minutes before we get into some Q&A, I think largely fit into three buckets in terms of what the CEOs talk to us about. They talk to us about the need for change, they talk to us about the need to drive efficient growth, and they talk to us about regulation, probably not surprising. And let me just start, before I get into the specifics of the survey, with what I would view as the headline from what those 400 CEOs talk to us about. And I think the headline is, confidence is increasing on the part of US CEOs. It may be a cautious optimism, and it may not be increasing at a light speed rate, but it is increasing. And the vast majority of the CEOs that participated in the survey are absolutely more confident about the economy and where their business is going over the next 3 years than they say they were a year ago. The other thing I think driving some optimism is technology itself, and the opportunity on the part of CEOs to look at some of those new technologies, and they translate into the buzzword around data and analytics that we're all hearing every day, but the possibilities of what data and analytics are going to provide to CEOs in terms of how they're going to look at their customer relationships differently, how they're going to operate their companies differently, and how they're going to have new opportunities to get closer to their customer if they can figure out how to use some of those analytic capabilities more effectively than their competitors. That's, I think, spurring a tremendous amount of confidence and optimism on the part of US CEOs. And interestingly, one of the pieces of feedback that actually surprised me a little bit, or at least I wasn't anticipating it, is the feedback from the CEOs that it's really becoming fairly industry agnostic in terms of the disruption that they're worried about. We had a CEO of one of the major healthcare organizations in the United States tell us that he's spending more time looking at what Amazon and Uber are doing and how they're relating to their customers, because he believes that as customers get used to the kind of client service, customer experience that they're going to have when they go to buy something online or go to utilize the services of a company like Uber, that those are the expectations they're going to bring when they come to buy healthcare services from his organization. And that thread, that theme of getting out of your own industry and looking at what you need to take away and learn from industries that on the face of it may not have anything to do with what you're doing was a theme that really resonated on the part of a lot of the CEOs as we talked to them this year. Before I wrap up, I think one other thing that I can't talk about what's on the minds of CEOs and the findings in this survey without talking about talent as well, because having the right people with the right skills is going to grow in importance, I think, in the future as compared even to how important it has been in the past. And, you know, as I think about it, I think for the last 100 years or so, when you think about what has been the greatest either constraint on or contributor of growth, I think most of us would say financial capital. The access to and availability of financial capital has been the single biggest inhibitor or constraint or accelerator of growth in our businesses. And I have a very strong view that going forward, it's going to be human capital that replaces financial capital as either the biggest growth engine or the biggest constraint on a lot of companies' ability to grow.
Please give a round of applause. Thank you. In just the few minutes that we have, John, that was a great presentation, by the way. I think it was very comprehensive. I had a couple of questions about your survey, and one of them is whether it's just gotten a lot harder to be a CEO these days versus 5 years ago, let's say. I mean, has it gotten a lot harder?
Is my board in the room? Yeah, it's damn difficult today to be the CEO. You know, I think most CEOs always, when you're in the role, I'm sure you always feel like it's harder. That hit me when I talked to some of my predecessors, all of whom told me that the period while they were CEO was the hardest and most challenging period in our firm's history. After I told them I thought today was the most challenging period. So I think you always feel that way, but I do think there are some things happening that are making it more challenging for CEOs today. And one is globalization is clearly a factor that is complicating success for CEOs. And I think the pace at which technology is potentially disrupting sector after sector is a big issue that my predecessors didn't have to face in the way that we do today. Because of the challenges the companies we work with are changing as quickly as they're changing, the type of talent we need to attract as a firm has to change in a way that we've never seen before. So, you know, several of the most recent acquisitions we've made at KPMG have been companies we never would have thought about 3 years ago. An acquisition we just made in the US of a group of data scientists on the West Coast that don't look like accountants, don't dress like accountants. Somebody told me I was going to have to be prepared for the number of tattoos I was going to see when I walked into the room. So, you know, we are changing the fabric of KPMG by attracting engineers, medical professionals.
You don't think about that at all when you look at accounting.
That's the kind of talent we need to be able to help our clients deal with the most challenging problems that they're facing. So talent used to be just about how can I find the best accountants or tax attorneys in the world. Now it's what kind of talent am I going to need tomorrow that I didn't need yesterday?
John, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. John Veihmeyer, the Global Chairman of KPMG. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.